Welcome to GearWire.com. I'm Owen O'Malley, and we're going to take a look at this top guy right now. The bottom dude is the Golden Age project pre-73, and this is sort of its newer companion piece. This is the Comp54. The Golden Age Comp54 is, like the pre-73, based on an old Neve module. It's based on the 2254 dynamics module. The Comp54 is a compressor. It's a single-channel solid-state compressor. Features all discrete components. There's no ICs in there anywhere. And because it's sort of inspired by that vintage circuit and built in a similar way to that vintage circuit, you get a very similar sort of old-school, very colored compression tone with distortion that sort of sweetens the compression. It doesn't sound like a modern sort of antiseptic, total hi-fi compression. These two guys together create basically a vintage-sounding channel strip. It's almost like your budget Neve channel strip. And whereas a vintage Neve unit would run you in the thousands of dollars, this guy runs you about $400 for most retailers. So it's not the least expensive single-channel compressor you can get, but it does achieve pretty impressive vintage sound, Neve-style sound, at a fraction of the cost of an actual Neve unit. So for starters, let's just bypass here so we can hear our clean signal. We've got a guitar Strat feeding this AC-15 going into a CAD Trion 7000, and right now we're just hearing the pre-73. So here's our signal. Now let's kick in our compressor and hear what it sounds like with the settings we've already got dialed in. Okay, let's play with the controls a little bit here. So for starters, we've got a threshold control. Now the threshold basically just dictates, how high the signal has to go before the actual compression kicks in. So right now we're at about, we're at negative 4 dB, right in the middle. If we bring it even lower, you can hear that the compression seems to be even more extreme. Next to that, we've got ratio. And the ratio is actually determining how much the signal is, or how much gain is reduced. If you're at a ratio of 2 to 1, you're getting half the output after the threshold limit. And if we go even higher with the ratio, it's a more extreme effect. So these two together really sort of determine the gain amount, the gain reduction amount. Next, we've got attack and release, and these two sort of determine how you treat your transients, how percussive your input signal is going to be. Attack and release are really sort of integral if you're going to be shaping the sound of a snare drum. But you can get sort of an idea of what they do, even if we're just playing this sort of clean percussive guitar here. And then release obviously sort of determines, how long it takes for the effect to disengage once the signal's dropped below the threshold again. Next to that, we've got a high-pass filter. There are a couple positions here. It's off right now, but then you get a cutoff at 50 hertz, 100 hertz, and 7K. So let's listen to what that sounds like. So you can hear, you can actually do quite a bit of tonal shaping, even though this is technically a dynamics processing unit. And that's really what turns the two of these units together into a pretty excellent and complete sort of single channel analog front end. Yeah, pretty nice. And then you've got your gain control right here. Obviously, if you've got your threshold really low and your ratio really high, you're going to want to compensate with the gain right there. A couple other buttons on the front here. Now, bypass we already covered before. That just takes the signal and sends it directly from the in to the out, completely bypassing the circuit. But then we have this in-out button, which you would think sounds like it does exactly the same thing, but in-out actually just takes the compressor out of the signal. So you can hit in-out and you're still getting the coloration of all the individual discrete components in here. You're kind of getting the sonic character of the Comp54 introduced into your signal without actually compressing your signal. We've got a meter button that switches between output metering and gain reduction metering. Just another, it's a nice visual tool. You know, you should be relying on your ears when you're sort of designing a sound. But it's just a nice little shortcut to be able to monitor both output and input, and gain reduction. And then finally here we've got a link button. You press that on, and you can get two of these guys and link them together with a standard 1/4 inch to 1/4 inch TRS cable, balanced TRS cable. And that way you can sort of make sure that if you're tracking stereo material, or you're using these as sort of master compressors, or even as mastering compressors, then you can make sure that the two units are sort of behaving the same, and you won't get uneven volume spikes or uneven gain reduction on both sides of the stereo spectrum. So, sort of nice little function if you're going to get a pair of these. Let's look at the back really quick. Again, we're looking at the top guy, but here's our connection. It's balanced XLR in and out with the option of 1/4 inch in and out. And here's our link for connecting two units and stereo linking them. And finally, we've got this interesting little button. It's called 600 ohm termination. Now, the original circuit design output had a 600 ohm impedance. But if you're going to be placing this unit in front of sort of modern capture devices, the impedance of which is much higher, something like 10 kilo ohms, then you just press this button in, and you can hear it. It does change the sound. So this is just a way of sort of calibrating the output impedance of the Comp54 for the best matching with whatever equipment you happen to be using, whether it's a sort of a vintage input or modern input. So now we've got a Squier vintage modified jazz bass hooked up to the high Z input in our pre-73. Let's bypass this signal here just to hear what the bass sounds direct. And now let's bring in the compression. Again, bypassed. Play a little with the attack here. can hear if we sort of, lower the release time, you kind of get this note swell, more noticeable note swell. And if you want to make your effect transparent, you want to sort of match the note decay, the long note decay, with a longer release time. A little bit smoother, just kind of lets the note kind of hang there in the breeze. So that's a real quick sort of taste test of what the Comp54 sounds like, what it can do. This channel strip in particular, I think, sounds really, really good on snare drum. So definitely worth trying both of these items out on some drums, some percussion. Obviously, it sounds pretty good on bass and sounds pretty good on guitar too. So there's a lot you can do with these relatively low-priced units. They're not the cheapest. Again, the Comp54 retails for about $400. You can certainly get 2-channel compressors for less than that. But there's a lot of functionality on this guy, and the sound is very close to that vintage Neve sound. Again, we don't have a 2254 here to compare it to. But you get very close to that sound at a very small fraction of the price of an actual Neve compressor. Totally usable unit here. It's the Golden Age Project Comp54. Sounds really nice. Very fun to play with. You've been watching GearWire.com. See you later.